We got 5:30. Stand for the pledge. Tracy's gonna lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Jenny David.
Here.
Roger Mayhew.
Yep.
Charles Wiltie.
Here.
Brenda Simmons.
Here.
Craig Scott.
Here.
Commissioners, any additions or corrections to the agenda? No. Item 3, public comment on agenda items only. Any public comment in the room? Any public comment on the phone? Item 4, fiscal year 2024 budget draft. Tim, you have the floor.
Some new things since we met last week. Work first off from fiscal year 24 alternate budget plan. That's the sheet. I want to draw your attention to the things that are highlighted. Let's start with the red items first. Talking to the prosecuting attorney and going back to the resolution we adopted earlier this year for the Carpel software, we wrote in the resolution that the $75,000 expense for that software will be built into the fiscal year 24 budget. We had that conversation when we were talking about ARPA distributions, and I just would leave open to you that it's still an option to fund that software purchase out of ARPA. If we chose to do that, that's another $75,000 that we can reduce the general fund proposal by. In the conversations last week, we also talked about our school resource officers and what could we do about moving roughly a quarter of what we have budgeted in those activities out of the general fund because they're not in school for those 3 months, and instead move that over to the road patrol millage. And you've got them broken out, one for the West Branch Rose City school resource deputy, the other one for the Whittemore Prescott school resource deputy. And that movement would save the general fund $26,627 in the West Branch Rose City case, and in the $20,941 in Whittemore Prescott. And again, we're not saying those deputies are laid off for 3 months. We're saying they're going to be moved over to the road patrol millage and doing actual road patrol work for those 3 months when school's not in session. And that brings those two budgets closer in line with the $75,000 schools are paying in each case. One other note toward the bottom, next year is going to be an election year. There will be at least, it sounds like a February presidential primary and a May election, and then of course the August election. And right now we don't have a handle on exactly what those costs are going to be and exactly what the state's going to be reimbursing. That budget will likely be amended during one of our quarterly adjustments as those numbers come into finer focus. Usually that works out to be a wash, but I did look back in 2020 and it did end up having more, or 15,000 more in expenditures than revenues that were brought in. So that's just a caution. That's an expensive proposition during an election year, as everybody is well aware. And this coming year, everything's changed. It's just in terms of how that whole election process is going to work, the number of days that people can come to the polls and so on. So I think we're all going to be learning across the state what the new expenses are. And I want to jump back up to the PA 152 item that's highlighted there. This was the option that was brought out about moving away from the hard cap and using the 80-20 formula. While the number is still valid, looking at one of the contracts, our Teamsters Court unit, that contract is still, health insurance is still with the Teamster Welfare Fund. And so the language was left alone, but there is a line in there that says for those employees that only the hard cap would be used. The 80-20 is not an option. The fact that a portion of our employees wouldn't apply to them, I'm not sure we could uniformly do an 80-20 across the board and leave some employees off from that list. I don't think PA 152 allows that. It's like you pick one plan and that's what you go with. On the positive side, these changes that are in red almost offset that in its entirety. There was some about 20,000 over the reduction goal in the original proposal, putting that into place with these three numbers that you see in red, it pretty much washes out that PA 152 anyway, and leaves us with a balanced budget. So that's just new since we last spoke. The other items that you have at your seat, the first one is the one pager, is the Road Patrol Millage Fund. And I would just draw your attention to the department requested number, and then that far right column, the alternate plan. The alternate plan includes moving the expense for the school resource deputies into this budget, along with the secondary road patrol grant position and moving one of the lieutenants over. So all of that compiled into that last column on the right still leaves a surplus of just over $10,000 in that fund, if that option or those options were chosen. The other item that you have, the thick one, is all of the special funds. So all of the enterprise funds, special funds, capital improvement funds, and so on. So you have the detail with them. And what you'll see in there for road patrol is that original proposal with the department and no change. But this document here would incorporate the changes that are on the other page. So you can see what that does per line item. So that's what's different. Have had a number of departments come through since we last met, all with good suggestions, good ideas that they're looking at, and some concern about in cases where we have at least one department with an open position, and whether that position will still be part of the budget in 30 days. Obviously that remains to be known as we work through the process. But some good suggestions, some good ideas that they've had. So I think we'll see some more adjustments yet between now and the time it comes to actually adopt the budget. So a lot of good input. Again, the goal is when you adopt a budget to adopt a balanced budget. In fact, it's really, as far as the goal, it's the law. You have to adopt a balanced budget. So whatever we do, that's where we have to end up at the end of the day.
This alternative budget plan is still has reduction in force. Can you explain that?
Well, what that means is really goes back to that very first item under the notes, the Gladwin County agreement. We've talked with Gladwin County about the potential of their bringing a number of their jail inmates over to Ogemaw County. They're dealing with a structural issue in the county, as their current jail facility doesn't adequately or doesn't meet the state standards. And they were discussing very actively about just closing down the facility and sending all of their inmates to other counties. If that were to occur here, the potential revenue that would bring in would eliminate the need for any of these reductions outright. Now, obviously, the details would remain to be worked out. We don't know how many right now. We don't know, transporting who would be doing that. We don't know what they would be doing for their holding facilities in Gladwin. All of that would remain to be worked out. In conversations with the county administrator in Gladwin, they're looking at all options too. They're also looking at engineering studies to improve their current facility, find out how much that would cost, studies to build a new jail, how much that would cost. But nevertheless, in the county administrator's opinion, they have a more immediate issue. They have a facility that does not pass Department of Corrections inspection, so they need to do something. Unfortunately, we aren't in Gladwin County. We can't really force the issue. So the question is, will we have some kind of an agreement between now and the start of this budget year or shortly into the year? And I still couldn't tell you if we will or not. So if we don't, that's why the alternative budget plan was created. If we don't, we still are compelled to have a balanced budget. So how do we do that? These reductions are what's what I proposed. When we get to the reduction in force, that means literally 9 full-time equivalents and part-time positions. The way our contracts read in the 2 units that would be permanently affected. Before we can lay off any full-time employee, we must first eliminate all of our part-time. So that's a factor in here as well. Now, recall the conversation that we had last week. There were 2 major revenue sources that really have fallen off over the last 5 years. One of those was the number of inmates that we were housing from other counties. 5 years ago, we were at a capacity, average daily capacity of 104. After last year, we were down to 72, literally half the capacity of our facility. We were bringing in revenues in excess of $400,000 5 years ago. And this year we were down to roughly 250. And I would point out that that revenue is not even enough to cover the bond payment on the building itself. That's how far down that's fallen. And this is something that the board has asked our auditors to put together every year for several years now. It's just exactly so the board would know each year what it's costing us per inmate per day in that facility. And so those numbers are presented to us in the audit, and that's why we know what our average numbers are. The other revenue was generated primarily from, I'm going to say tickets, but that's not how we classified it in the budget. We called it statute costs in the budget. In 2018, that brought in $692,776. This year, we budgeted for $170,000. That's more than $500,000 reduction in revenue there, by a 75% drop. And given the fact that we're dealing with the jail that's at half capacity and these revenues, the reduction in force is focused primarily on reducing then the number of corrections officers that we would need to staff a jail that had a capacity of half of what it is now. And then unfortunately, by moving one of our lieutenants over to the road patrol position, that would mean, unfortunately, we would lose about 3 of our least senior deputies in the road patrol budget to cover that move. The reason why the 1 lieutenant position seems so expensive, it really comes down to the pension. Those officers are both in what's called that defined benefit plan, which is far more expensive than the defined contribution plan. And it also has a pretty large legacy cost to it as well. So that's why that number seems so high. Moving that, though, out of the general fund, again, reduces that expenditure to help us get to that balanced level. That's the extent of what I'm talking about in terms of reduction in force. It does not hit courts. It does not hit other constitutional offices of the county. It's focused just where these revenue shortfalls are. Hesitate to call them revenue shortfalls. I'm sure the jail wasn't built to generate revenue for the county. I'm pretty confident of that. But the bottom line is, we have a 144 bed facility. We're only staffing, or we only have beds filled on an average daily basis at 72. Clearly, that's a pretty simple piece of arithmetic for me to say, okay, we're paying way too much for the 72 we're housing. Now, I appreciate from day to day. I mean, some days we may have 80, other days we may have 60. It just depends on what day, but that's our average. And that trend is pretty clear. We did see a drop from 104 per day in 2018 when we hit COVID. We hit a low of 69 per day in 21, and we've only recovered now up to 72, so only recovered the 3. And honestly, there is a trend that we're seeing through our legislature, and possibly even, well, I'm sure it's impacting prosecutions as well, but of keeping the lesser offenses out of jail. And that's a trend that is beyond the control of this county. If the state says if you have this level of a misdemeanor, they don't go to jail, they get fines, they get probation, whatever, then that's just the circumstance we have. And I believe that's playing into these numbers. So you're seeing that reduction at the same time. Now, is there a possibility of other counties coming to fill these beds? It's possible, but I can tell you in my experience, when I've seen jails built in Clare and Saginaw, I think even Alpena recently opened a new one. They are all opening with excess capacity. So it's not like we're the only game in town. We'd be competing with those other counties, going to make it harder to fill those beds with the other counties. But it's still a possibility, but that's even, frankly, less of a chance happening than what our Gladwin proposal is. So I don't think it's something we can count on. Certainly not something that you want to go into a budget year saying we're going to generate this revenue with the reality that it probably won't come.
I have a question. So if we would have to go this route, this reduction in force, and then we'd have to make the cuts to the jail, what would be the first step? We'd have to have the state come in and they would do an assessment to say how many officers we need to run at half capacity?
Did that.
They wouldn't. I believe that actually was happening this week. I believe they were here. But that's what Paul was mentioned to me. So yes, that would happen. Now I'm going off of experience I had in another county where we had the same issue crop up. Larger jail, but the jail was structured a little bit differently. So we were able to say, we're not going to fill wing 6. It's just closed. So any staffing capacity then was based on now a lower number. In that case, we went a jail that was built for roughly 650. We took it down to 400. And that's how we were able to reduce the staffing. So that same philosophy, I believe, would work here, although structurally, I mean, it's going to be a little bit different in terms of how they do their calculation. But that's the point, is that there would be certain parts of the jail we just simply wouldn't be using.
Is that feasible, Sheriff? I thought we had a study here in the past year that came in. We were actually understaffed with how that jail is set up with the I think it's a tripod system or something.
The minimum staffing with the 144 bed, we're at minimum staffing right now. We have to maintain that in order to function as the state come and let us do it. Just to throw out there today, we reached out to Genesee County. They do house out still at $35 a head. We're trying to work that angle too if we can. I mean, that's what we've done in the past. We brought all the Genesee County sentenced inmates up here. We're trying to work that out, and the legislatures is hurting that jail hugely by not housing misdemeanors. That's affecting us big time.
But that's not going to change moving forward, more than likely.
No. So that's out of our control. We've got some feelers out there for other counties to see if we can perhaps house other counties.
But I guess the question was, have you guys talked about this? Are you able to decrease your staffing? Are you able to minimize the beds from the maximum of 65 inmates?
I can't shut down blocks, no, in that regards. Because I have a certain amount of people that I need separate. And if I had closed, I'll be closing like 2 mail pods and only have a smaller section to put the guys that fight and everything else. I have to keep them separate.
So I guess that's my question. Have you two had a conversation about what you just described?
Just briefly with the sheriff and under sheriff, I've had that conversation.
Commissioner Simmons.
My understanding was it couldn't be reduced in just what that young man was saying right there, because of the way the jail is structured. Not so much how many beds are in there,
Correct. They're not
but how is it structured? Does it still have to stay the same? Am I correct?
Get even close. What's that? How
Am I correct?
Yeah, I don't have like a 200 wing to shut down staffing. I still have to keep the 8 blocks.
Yeah.
And if I close 2 of them down to get down under 100, then I've only got 6 blocks, and I have to have at least 2 for the females, which only leaves 4 for the males.
You got to be classified. You got to classify each inmate because to eliminate any problems that exist. So classification is huge.
You don't want any deaths in there.
Absolutely not. So if you give us a few and let us check into other counties, I mean, that's the alternative that I see. We're going to work on Genesee County. We're hoping Gladwin comes through. We did have the perfect opportunity and we let that go. But that's beyond. So we're moving forward. We gotta reach out, and Tom is on top of it, and we'll see what we can do.
Gladwin, I had a conversation with one of the commissioners at one of the recent meetings in the past week, actually, commissioner over there, and it sounded to me like they're in the very beginning stages of this conversation. This individual didn't say either way, but it definitely honestly didn't look all that favorable for Ogama County. They neighbor quite a bit and deal quite a bit with Clare. So I did put some feelers out there and had a pretty detailed conversation in hopes that this was a go ahead. And it's not for sure a no, but it didn't sound good.
I think it's at the level of the commissioners now. The sheriff Shay and myself, we're listening to our commissioners. Our commissioners is the drive behind this. If you folks can reach out to the commissioners there and work that angle, I think it would help tremendously. You know, it's out of my hands, obviously, and it's out of Sheriff Shay's hands. So it's very important that if you folks reach out and see if we can't make that happen.
Comment.
Go ahead.
Okay. I talked to the jail today in Gladwin, and they house anywhere from the high 30s to the low 50s in their jail. So, and you were talking about setting a certain amount of cells aside for $1 million. So I just can't imagine that they would even consider $1 million for 39 to 50 inmates. I think they'd have to be out of their mind to consider $1 million for that.
Yeah, but with that being said too, we don't know the infrastructure needs there. We know that it's bad. I mean, Tim, when you spoke with their county administrator, did the state give them any type of deadline that, hey, you're either gonna get things in this type of condition at this point, or we're shutting you down, or?
He didn't indicate that. We did look at the audits for Gladwin County, and they were spending pretty close to what we spend for jail. They were spending upwards of $2 million a year in jail as well. So, you know, 1 million probably didn't sound so bad, you know, if we were able to pull that off.
And
I asked that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, we had that law enforcement meeting with Gladwin County. They had their jail administrator was there. Didn't he say on average between 60 and 70 inmates? I don't remember anything about a 30, 40, 50 number.
Yeah.
I talked directly to the jail.
The administrator?
Whoever runs the jail, yeah.
Jail administrator?
I don't know what it is.
We had our meeting 3 weeks ago or a month ago, and those numbers were never discussed that well. And he was there.
My question is Tim, this reduction in force, I mean, with how you just explained, and maybe I misunderstood, if you're looking at reduction of force, you just directed it directly towards the actual jail. Are you looking at reduction in force any other place?
I mentioned those 3 lowest seniority deputies would be on that list as well. But yeah, that's it. That's where my focus was. And I'm very interested to hear what we learn about what we can do in terms of reducing, you know, the areas of the jail that we use now. You know, I heard blocks. That's exactly the language I'm used to hearing when they start talking about what you cordon off. And then they run their analysis from there as far as what they recommend for their staffing level. I'm not clear if Department of Corrections recommends a staffing level at a certain level. Are we compelled to meet that? You know, I don't know the answer to that.
Shouldn't that information be in the study that they did in the past year?
They did. And that's, you know, again, we staffed up to that study. And that study, remember, said 144 units facility, you need this much staff. We're not near that. On the average daily, according to our auditor, it was 72 last year. Mm-hmm. So that's where I'm saying, okay, if that's truly our number, if we're going to be in the 72, let's give it a range, 75 to 85. That's what we should staff to, not 144.
I understood, and maybe I misunderstood, that it wasn't based on beds, it was based on structure for staffing, but
it's all part of the formula. You know, if we have the structure and we add another 20 beds to the structure, I assure you they're going to ask that we, you know, add staffing as well.
Questions, comments, Commissioner Scott?
Nope.
Commissioner Wiltie? Commissioner Simmons?
Well, going on maybes about this, you gotta find out the facts. I don't want to pass a budget on maybe this or maybe that. I want to pass a budget on facts. You know, either it is or it isn't, and there's no gray area there. Not with the budget. Say, I won't go with maybes. I will not.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. This number is quite alarming. $1,081 and 129 there. I understand ticket revenues was on there, but again, we added $500,000. I think this budget has headed in the wrong direction. Um,
And if we went ahead with $500,000 ARPA,
so,
it'd be a lot more. And my understanding is, I don't know if this is a fact, but my understanding is that other counties around us didn't use their ARPA money to balance their budget. I'd have to look into that. Didn't have a chance today.
that's a fact with Iosco, Gladwin, and Aranac.
Around us have a fund balance.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but
Okay, then.
I don't know.
I guess it's not.
I
then.
said, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But
Okay, that's fine. If it's not, it's not.
Commissioner Mayhew, do you have anything?
I just passed the Dial-A-Ride bus coming here. Help wanted. Yeah,
Okay,
and it says help wanted. They got part-timers there, correct?
transit,
They're gonna be the first one to go.
Well, that's an interesting question because even in that bargaining unit, they're considered sort of like their own island, if you will. We have some steelworker reps in the audience. They can correct me if I'm wrong, but on a whole, if you're going to lay people off, you have to go to the part-timers first, and that's accurate in all the contracts. Steelworkers, though, have an interesting, I don't call it a division, but an interesting section where they treat the transit part-timers and full-timers as sort of in their own dome. So if we were talking about laying people off at transit, yes, we would have to take the part-timers first. But if we're not talking about that transit bubble, that may not necessarily be true. Now, this proposal doesn't touch the steelworkers unit, so we don't have to worry about that in that group. But all the other ones, the rule is the same. If you're going to lay somebody off, you have to start with the part-time before you hit any of the full-time.
what about the at-will employees? How many are there?
I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, what?
That's a number I would like to
dozen.
know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I've got the answer. I just have to look to count them up.
And what transit is, you can only use part-timers to do weekends runs. So weekends would be done. If you laid off the part-timers, there would not be any more weekend.
Well, the transit fund is pretty healthy by itself, so I don't think we even need to venture in that direction. They will have surplus again this year, and by all accounts, even next year we'll still have surplus.
But I understand that they're where they're at as far as their fund balance, but isn't that the union contract we have to follow?
But again, the union contract says treats transit by itself within that fund. So even our structure within this budget, they're their own fund. It doesn't impact the general fund.
And did I understand you correctly by what you stated with the hard cap, the 80-20, that takes that 149,000 right out of there, correct? That's not something that I know that's something I'm definitely wouldn't be interested in doing, but did I misunderstand you saying that?
It would, if we went that route, it would be less than that 149 unless we were able to get an agreement with the court unit that says, okay, we'll go to hard cap. But we'll go to 80-20. But the plan they're on right now, they're already paying out of pocket quite a bit. So I don't think you get a lot of takers on doing that, on amending the contract. And that's why I get back to with PA 152. I don't know off the top of my head if it allows you to do something different from one group of employees that you do with the other. And I don't think it does. I think it's all or nothing. It's all 80-20 or it's all hard cap, and that's it. So if that's the case, then the 149 is off the table. But as I mentioned, even taking that off the table now with the other things that are listed on here, we meet the reduction goal. So we wouldn't need to do anything with the health insurance at all to meet the goal.
Have something to say.
Go ahead.
Last Thursday, you also made a comment that we're waiting to hear back from our insurance carrier on possibly some savings. I mean, it didn't sound like it was going to be anything the white knight to come in and save the day, but I mean,
we've got a couple of things that are still in play. Mesa won't release their rates until tomorrow, so we'll know what those rates are. But generally, they've been pretty good about being under the hard cap. That's how we're able to do the HSA, and I'm anticipating that'll still be the same. Mentioned with the legacy cost and the pension on the defined benefit. And that's one that we were talking about, the possibility of bonding that over a longer period. And it would do two things. Number one, it would stabilize our budget. So we would know from year to year what we're going to have to pay in to pay off that bond for that pension obligation instead of being subject to these wild swings in the market in new actuary studies from MERS. We have a Zoom meeting scheduled with bond advisors on Thursday, and will give us a better idea of the possibility of that happening. I'm pretty confident it could happen. What I don't know right now is what kind of savings that would be, would entail us in our budgets. So that's we're still working toward that. That's something, if we're going to do, we have to do by the end of the year, because the statute that allows us to do it will expire. So we've got them working feverishly to get us the numbers and get us the information we need to make that decision. That's, I think, the big one that's out there that could potentially take substantial expense that we have each year and give us a measurable reduction and something we can count on in future years as well. Now, downside, we do have to pay on it longer than what we would if we just stayed the course with MERS. But I can tell you a lot of communities have done this for the exact reason that we're talking about here, just to stabilize the budget so we're not hit with these wild swings every year.
I know you can't give any real hard numbers, but can you ballpark?
I can't. I really can't. There's just too many factors in there. It's going to get into the length of time on the bond itself. Talk about, I don't even know for sure what the actuary numbers are showing us for this year, given the error that we found in the actuary report. So we'll have those answers soon, but right now I wouldn't even venture a guess as to what it would be. It would be something, but how much I couldn't tell you.
How soon?
I want it by the end of September. I want it before you need to adopt a budget.
The only way to take off that $75,000 for the PA software expenses to take it out of the ARPA funds, correct?
Right. Well, that's how it was originally proposed as well.
Now you're talking about the ARPA funds, that 1 point whatever it is million that we wanted to use for this building. Is that what you're talking about? Right. That money?
Right.
Yeah, the $75,000 for the prosecuting attorney software. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes.
We're going to pay for that with ARPA.
It's on here. It's on here as a possibility in red, right here. 75,000.
I see this. So there won't be anything for improvements.
We haven't agreed. It's just on there as a possibility.
Commissioner Simmons, $75,000. We have over $1 million in ARPA funds right now.
In what fund?
ARPA.
1 point.
Yeah, and I understand that.
We'd still have over $1 million in ARPA funds.
Well, I would imagine by the time you finish this building doing that, you probably have that money spent. You have the furnace on, the air conditioning on here, they're freezing upstairs. I mean, they're cool upstairs, they're freezing downstairs. In the wintertime, it's just the opposite. They're gonna have fans on down here in the wintertime so they don't roast.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that stuff, they don't just give that away. That costs a lot of money.
Right. We're waiting for
And 1.1 million, I don't think is too extravagant for all that.
I think how long before we know further information on staffing and the jail? I mean, this is based on a lot of maybes.
Yeah, well, we will. I mean, it is the priority at the moment, so we will find an answer before you have to adopt anything. But I really want to look at the analysis. Should the state come up with some other numbers and just understand what they're telling us? To me, it's pretty simple arithmetic, but there are variables that we discussed. It may not be that simple.
Because I know in the past we've had a hard time keeping staffing adequate over there. I think we're at a good staffing. Is there any postings right now?
I filled the last person spot.
Comments? I know I'm not comfortable with this budget. I think this budget's went in the wrong direction. I think we've given $500,000 over 4 years. I was shocked to see these numbers. I don't want to lay people off. I don't want to cut people's health insurance. Again, I talked to Gladwin. I put in a good word, the best I could. But to me, with our brief conversation, it did not look very promising. Hopefully I'm wrong.
And we do have phone numbers of the commissioners there. And I know Commissioner Scott has started to reach out to them. Us being on the law enforcement board, we're going to continue those talks and do everything in our power. Like I said at our meeting last Thursday, It's a rare opportunity. We need to do everything we possibly can right now, see if we can make it happen. But this is very alarming. I mean, 4 years of $500,000 a year from ARPA funds. Sustainability wise, it's very alarming.
Here's my question, excuse me.
Commissioner, go ahead.
My question is this, my understanding, the reason we turned this away from the county commissioner, the county commissioner used to do all this. And the clerk's office, am I right? Yes, okay. Did that. And by with some hiring, it's my understanding was it was for the purpose of improving this budget. And we've given $500,000 a year of ARPA money to this, other counties have not. And it's worse now than it was before. So I don't understand why it wasn't caught before. I know I felt like when I came on board that I was kind of working in the dark. Not like it was. We always knew the budgets. We talked about the budgets at a lot of commissioner meetings and stuff like that. But it's like you could see it in black and white. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're talking in circles here, and it doesn't make sense to me. We're in big trouble here.
Do you guys want to hear this from department heads?
Well, it's not a surprise to me.
Okay.
I've seen the numbers every year since I've been here. This is not a surprise to me. I'll just say that for the record. I've known we've been at deficit spending since the first year I got here. I don't know why I'm surprised that there's people that are surprised. I guess you're just not looking at the numbers. That's all I've been looking at since I got here was the numbers. I've known it's been that way right along, but I'm sitting here waiting. You seem to have a lot of knowledge on how to do it. I'm waiting for your answer.
Well, we're not gonna do it on maybes, I'll tell you that.
Okay,
Sure.
whatever. We'll do it your way.
I think we were told, and maybe I misunderstood, that this is the worst budget that's been seen in quite some time.
Who said that?
It was said at our last meeting.
Who said that?
It was
I
said
did.
at our last meeting.
Oh,
I
you
said-
did? Good.
It is the worst
Okay.
budget we've ever seen.
All right.
If you're not talking about just $500,000 in ARPA money, you're also transferring in $200,000 from the commissary, $110,000 from the treasurer's tax reversion fund, $10,000 from the CPL. If you took all of those other sources out, can you imagine how awful your deficit would actually be if you didn't have these resources you're transferring in?
That's right.
It is the worst fiscal situation that we have seen ever.
I think that's
There are
what we
many
need to hear.
factors to that. The economy is worse than it's been in 40 years. The inflation is higher than it's been in 40 years. So yeah, it was me. I was one who said.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I
said
just
it
like
was-
to hear sometimes who said it.
It was said
Here.
by definitely somebody that knows. Public comment.
Well, she knows a lot of things, but you guys she knows that you're down in a cash deficit, but you don't want to give it to her.
Public comment. Is the commissioners done?
You've already given 2 million.
Public comment. Anybody in the room, please give us some public comment. Mr. Howard, you had your hand raised?
Yeah, I wanted to reflect back on how come we didn't sign that Calcasta contract. It was signed by the other commissioners, and all it needed was a signature.
I think we came up with a rate and then I didn't hear anything further on that. I heard it was denied because the rate was,
That was agreed upon with their commissioners and everything. And we chose to raise it and they got mad. Why didn't, if that was a huge issue of the budget, that would help the budget tremendously. 30 inmates from back in May through this year and all of next year and onward, and going up $1 each year. Why didn't we sign that?
do you recall?
Bottom line, the commission felt the rate was too low. And when it was negotiated, when the contract was negotiated, this board was not represented at the table. And so it was brought to the board and at whatever the rate was, and the board said, no, we want, I think we said 33. I don't remember the number.
I don't recall if it was the same.
Dollars an inmate, the difference, and we have this huge budget problem. This is well over $1 million this through next year. Well over $1 million it would have brought in.
We were given, how much it cost us per day per inmate, which was quite a bit higher. We've been given that every year at the audit, and I know there's been disagreements on that.
Because of what your bond is, you can't use that number. It costs like $6 a day to feed one of them. So that's a little more. The lights are always on, the water's going, the staff's there. If you're getting $30 a day, you're spending $20 a day in commissary, you're only spending $6 to feed them and a little bit for the water bill. So everything else is on already and going.
I know we weren't part of all of that conversation.
Well, I'm gonna make a comment on this. If he's gonna call us out on this, I'm gonna make a comment on this right now, and I feel very strong about this, okay? I wish you could have been there for that meeting, and I wish you could have seen the way your boss was acting towards us commissioners, the disrespect he had, the fact that he would not listen. He pretty much said that, well, whatever you guys decide to do, if it's not what I want to hear, I'm not gonna go negotiate that. So I think there was a major injustice that day.
Okay.
So if you're gonna call us out, I'm gonna call it right back at you.
That's fine.
Was that a commissioner meeting or a law enforcement
It's
meeting?
a commissioner meeting. Commissioner.
That's fine. You're talking about laying off all these people and
I
then
understand.
fix that. What I'm saying.
I understand. I think there's a lot more though that you need to educate yourself on that happened that day where that could have been saved.
Well, I wasn't there that day. I'm in charge now, and these people getting laid off are my responsibility.
I
I'm here
understand.
today.
I understand, but I'm just telling you right now what we saw that day and what I think.
Ryan Olsher's not sitting here. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I wish he
what
was.
said. Okay.
I think we fixed that problem by going back and making sure that we were representing during a negotiation.
We did.
So I wasn't there that day because I was doing a funeral for a fallen officer. That's why I wasn't here, and I wish I would have been.
I wish you had been here too, Sheriff.
But I want to say one other thing. If we start moving people around, we start tapping into that grant money, that millage money. We start reducing services. You're gonna find that millage is not gonna pass. And that millage brings in over $1 million. So when we start monkeying around with that millage, we're in trouble.
I guess am I misunderstanding? We're transferring this monies, but it didn't, I guess I didn't hear that. Hang on just a second. I guess I didn't, I guess maybe I didn't understand everything that we're gonna decrease services. We're talking about the road patrol millage, correct?
Reducing 3 officers.
On the road patrol?
If you reduce them officers, you don't have the services.
3 of the most junior officers.
3 most junior officers. I
Where
can't
is
give them
that?
the services that they need.
Tim brought it up tonight and was talking to us.
Right.
That's a low seniority deputies?
Exactly. So if we move the 1 lieutenant position over to the road patrol millage, and you can see the cost of that, that results in the need to reduce your 3 least senior officers. Now, I assure you that none of these transfers would occur if they're not consistent with what the millage says those monies could be spent on. Now, does that mean fewer physical people? Well, for 3 months of the year, it would not. For 3 months of the year, you're moving the 2 school resource officers over and you'll have that lieutenant position. You'll be right where you are today in terms of numbers. Those other 9 months, yeah, you will be down. We'll be down 2 to do that. But again, just trying to balance the budget. If there are any other ideas out there, we will play with them and find out what we can do.
I want to say one other thing about the SRO. One of my SRO at Whitmore Prescott has got low seniority. He'd get laid off. I'd have to take one of my senior officers that's on the road and appoint him there. That's going to reduce patrol time. It's just a trickle effect. Is when you start shifting bodies, you're taking away from that millage big time. And people will see that. People see the cars all the time. They see what's happening. I feel very strongly that I can get that millage passed next August. But when we start reducing things, we don't give what the people want. They're not gonna vote for it. That's why I don't stick cars out on I-75. They don't want cars out on I-75. I've heard it for years. I was one of them cars out on I-75, writing 25 tickets of shit. That's not what the people want. The people want patrol in their areas, period. They want us to fight crime in Ogama County, not fight crime on I-75. So I refuse, in my administration, to put cars out there. If my people want to go out there and write a ticket or two, I'm all for that. I'm not gonna micromanage them. But I refuse to have my cars set out there for 12 hours a day. It's not happening. What that does, it takes away from the people that support our sheriff's office. Bottom line.
I think, I don't think anybody's asking you to do that. I guess
Well, you start reducing numbers, you start reducing my manpower, it's gonna have an effect. Hugely. That's over $1 million that millage brings in. You start messing with that, we've got problems.
How much,
We will not have road patrol. We'll be like Iosco County.
I agree with you
Guarantee
100%,
it.
100%. How else can we cut this
And let me
budget?
say one other thing. I know what kind of crime we're fighting out there. You folks in the room have no idea what we're seeing every day, and that's the way we want it. If all this crime stuff starts surfacing, the people see what's actually in Ogama County, we're in trouble. We are so in trouble. The judges know what happens.
Do you have other options to cut $1 million? I hear everything you're saying. I don't disagree. But this is very frightening. We gotta find a way to balance this budget. Hold on, Sheriff. Let me finish. I agree. I'll agree with you 100%. We gotta find a way to balance this budget. $1 million. It does. It seems like you're obviously your department is being hit. Do you have any other ideas of what we can do? Because we're open right now. That's why we're.
And you know, I'm speaking for my undersheriff too. He's homesick. We're gonna sit down and we're gonna try to knock this out along with my lieutenant here. I mean, we have a huge problem with that jail. We've got 144 beds that we're trying to fill. But the problem is everybody else is seeing it. The legislature just messed us up. They're not sentencing these misdemeanors. And that's huge. Let us work on it a little bit.
Look at the comment as a judge and the sheriff's right. The legislator, I mean, there's a presumption, no jail, presumption, no probation, that judges have to overcome before they can do that. And as far as arresting misdemeanors, the officers, unless it's specific charges, they are not allowed to arrest them unless there's an exception that applies under the statute. So yeah, he's right. You know, and it's not that judges don't want to, or we don't want to be that tough. It's just that we have to overcome presumptions to allow it to happen. So, you know, that there's and that's not changing. It's that those presumptions are getting worse and worse, that the accountability and holding people to accountable is getting to be more and more difficult.
Agreed, but I foresee that in the future coming. That's not gonna change.
I don't see it stopping. That's what I'm saying.
So we gotta find a way to fix this.
That area is not going to stop.
Commissioner Simon, did you have something?
be nice if we could get the millage we're supposed to have 7 point. Instead of the 6.9 we're getting now. I mean, we've been, because of the Headley override thing, we've been cut over $1 million. And that mill would make up that $1 million. But we tried to pass it once and it didn't make it. And the problem is, and I see an override coming down again, because right now inflation's high, housing's really high. I don't expect it to stay that high. I expect it to come back down. And when that percentage comes back down again, so will our millage.
Any other department heads? Treasurer, do you have anything for us? Ideas, thoughts?
I wish I did. I wish I had the answer. We have very difficult decisions to make.
But it's been coming for a long time.
Any other department heads? Randy? I'm gonna pick out a few of y'all. Just give us something. That's why you're here. First of all, I appreciate y'all coming.
I think Commissioner Simmons is right. You do have to try for Headley override attempt as an election. They're very difficult to do. I think in 2016, when the county did it, I was a lot of different township meetings, commissioners came. There wasn't a great explanation for people to understand why it was needed. There was never a proposal of what types of things would be cut, what types of services would be changed, what types of fees would be raised. So for the general taxpayer, they didn't have any idea what that entailed. And when you're looking at the budget numbers you're looking at today, you're looking at very real cuts. You're looking at fewer services for your residents, and you're looking at increased fees. And so it may be, once that's out and everybody knows it, they may be inclined to do that. That said, that's not going to help you on this year's budget. That's moving forward in future years, because the soonest you could have that is an August election next year.
Correct. And right now, I work out there as well, and people are hurting. I don't foresee a millage. Hopefully we can maintain our current millages. I think that could even be a struggle in the future. Hopefully not, but people are financially strained. Clerk, do you have anything?
No. Oh, well, I'll just piggyback on what the treasurer said at the department head meeting about all of the different departments need to really crack down on the controllable expenses. Like, I get made fun of because I turn my light off in the vault sometimes. It's habit because I turn my lights off at home when I'm walking out the room. But things like that, I've been having conversations with the undersheriff about trying to save money with claims. We make how many extra copies of things that we don't necessarily need. Just trying to eliminate the extra expenses that are pennies, but trying to find pennies, you said, right?
Mm-hmm. It all helps.
It all helps.
Other department heads. Mr. Stein?
I don't know if we do claims, can we do it with an email instead of making copies, like you said, and bringing them over? A lot of stuff
we would still need one hard
We
copy.
still need one hard copy. That's
But
it.
do
But
you need a hard copy?
do you?
Scan
Yeah.
it rather than make a copy. You scan it and save it to your computer instead of having two physical hard copies. The only hard copy is the one that we have for the auditors, if they should need it.
So yeah, if you can.
But then I keep one just so they come back, because they
But
auditors also check.
But you
I
can
believe
pull
Paul
it
is
up on
now
scanner.
scanning in
Yeah.
his, so he's saving it to a file on his computer, just not making a hard copy. So there's not two physical pieces of paper.
Right.
I see you're added to this. We appreciate that. You're paying $12,000 annually now for space.
I just heard that.
You're on here. Whoops.
But do they still do the Maximus study?
Yes.
Is that something you guys do?
Yes.
So that's where you divide up the lights, the towers, or the heat and the paper and all that stuff? So am I getting that too on top of the?
Oh. I'll make a note of it.
I'm just curious because.
Yeah.
Your fund balance is quite substantial, correct?
I understand that, but if we keep.
Correct, I agree. This is just conversation.
They want the money, Brian.
Yeah, I hear. It won't fix this though.
Oh.
But it helps. It's $12,000. I assumed you guys had had that conversation. You haven't?
No, I have not.
Well, we have off and on a year. It finally hit paper with this proposal.
Brian, do you have anything?
I haven't. I've worked out from an expenditure standpoint where we keep it pretty lean, or I should say I am pretty lean. I have some thoughts for some of the health control. We do provide a service for 13 minutes in this county, but we don't charge. Which I think should be addressed as well. Permit fees and some other items as well too. Permits seem to be going up or staying steady for up. I don't think we're not really seeing a lot of the commercial or special use permits. Things in the past, from years past, where I can look back and see where we had 10, 12, 13. We're low on those, and I don't think that's part due to inflation and the economy as well too. But those things will definitely are going to help us this year. But I do have some ideas that I have. On paper for you.
You'll share those with Tim?
I got them right now. So,
Judge Michael? We've got on here, which we probably don't have any update, the child care fund calculation placement charges. There's no update on that, correct?
No, I submitted the final number to Tim, so you're that it created a $116,081 reduction in the appropriation line, the child care fund. Was the last number that I submitted.
Okay, and I think I've already plugged that in, but.
Yeah, I wasn't, I didn't bring it up because I figured that you had gotten that ahead of this, but yeah, the final number was 116 and change.
So that has been adjusted. That has been on the underneath the notes.
It's actually worked into all the arithmetic on the budget sheets. That's already.
But that's what you mean by child care fund calculations placement charges, correct?
Right. Well, we were also talking about some apprehension about the number of placements they were going to have. That there was a little bit of worry that we maybe had estimated what was needed there. So I think that's still going to be an open conversation. In fact, it will, because we'll never know exactly what it is. But as placements occur, they will be up to date. Yeah.
Anybody else? I don't know all of your faces. Denise, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I see district court is listed in the notes section, and I made amendments to the previously provided budget, but as far as cost savings, while I may have reduced expenditures, revenues did increase because there was some discoveries of reimbursement from the state that's been coming to Ogama that Roscommon's been paying for 10 years. So that kind of all my work in chopping our expenditures took away from that revenue going away. So while I made changes, to the best of my ability, it didn't affect the overall totals. But I would mention in Roscommon, I'm not saying anyone's good or bad, but we also face the same struggles. We also have a very large deficit to overcome there as well this year. It's all over the state. It's not just this county. And the controller provided a list of non-statutory departments. And it went on a flyer, and that's when, if you want the community to speak and offer input, you list all the things that could potentially go away because you have no statutory obligation to keep them alive. Well, they're more apt to do and pass heavily rollbacks, things of that nature. And departments that are affected, right, are more apt to make more cuts voluntarily forced. So I don't know if that's an option that you would want to pursue.
That's a good point. Really good point.
That's why we're doing this. Well, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Danielle, Janice.
I don't know if the sheriff's already looked into it, but I know our jail has taken federal prisoners for a long time.
We've been denied twice, is what we've been told, for our application for that process. I don't know if there's any update on that. Yeah, Roscommon does take federal, and that's.
Where were we at? 30? 20, 30?
I feel like somewhere along that line.
He keeps increasing it as our local inmates, dwindle. Yeah.
We'll definitely open that door again.
Yeah, and that's quite a bit more money than your normal.
Yes. Yeah.
We'll check into it tomorrow. Sure.
Denise, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I know in our budget, I mean, Danielle's cutting where he can. We were not sure how that revenue thing works, and Tim knows where that was coming from and should not have been there these last year or so. But I know that one of the things that I've asked for is to consider another position of what I would consider like a lean tech position, because right now we pay to have 911 do all of our lean. And circuit court also pays, and I think probate court pays a portion as well. And it is essential, beyond essential, for the court to have access to lien. And the ability to immediately recall warrants and immediately enter warrants and bond conditions and remove them. And all those things that we have to now call 911 and ask them to do and hope that it gets done. And they do a great job, but you're talking about time period still. I mean, we've had people arrested that shouldn't have been arrested because warrants didn't get out of lien on time. And that opens up the county to potential lawsuits. And it's not sufficient in any way, shape, or manner for the court not to have access to lien. And we would be willing, I talked to Judge Williams, Judge Bennett, if we created that position, yes, it would be a district court position that we would use for, you know, a clerk in some ways too, but we would do the court's warrants, you know, so at least it's in our building and the access is there easier to help everybody in that area. But it would require to have, you know, we lost apparently in district court. They took away an employee a few years ago. It needs to be added, but it needs to be added because we need to create a lien position. And that person had to go through training and things like that. So it's something that I've spoken to Tim about. He's added to kind of like a budget with it and a budget without. But just so you guys know the reason why, is that it's just silly to me, the potential for lawsuits that we're you know, looking at if we continue to have where we don't have immediate access to remove and enter liens and things like that.
Yeah, we were under the assumption that the conversation has definitely been started.
I appreciate that, but I just wanted to kind of reinforce the need for that.
911's aware too, because I was on there. They talked about it last month at the meeting.
Yes, and I did bring up to Jesse because I didn't want her to think we were just trying to take that from them and that they weren't doing their job, because they have been. It shouldn't be their job.
Anybody else from the courts that, I don't know. Denise, I seen you back there hiding. Do you have anything to add?
Back in 2016 and 17, they did cut the not mandated thing, and 911 and MSU got villages. So most of those things have already been cut.
The non-statutory departments. Anybody else in the room?
I think I just have one comment. I'm just looking at 9 layoffs. We are now, our unemployment is reimbursing 100%. So I don't know what the calculation is, but you could potentially have enough paying out unemployment for a 10th employee. I mean, I'm thinking if someone was to draw $600 a week for 20 weeks, 9 times 9 people, you could be looking at a whole nother position there too. And we haven't had to do any of that reimbursing, and I don't know how it works. It's something new that we just got in place. So yeah, we were saving that money from last year's budget unemployment, but now we may be paying out. So I just in my head.
True. Yeah.
There's something we may have to figure. You may have to put that into your expense lines now.
Right.
You know, I want to say one thing. Another concerning thing to me, and I just thought of this off the top of my head. Our part-time would have to go first. Our transport continues. So that means we'd have to bring in correction officers to do that transport and get that top weight. So how much money we'd save there if you eliminate our transport. I mean, I just thought of that. I don't know what they do.
Any other comments in the room? Any comments, public comment on the phone? Jeff, I see you're on there, your department head.
No, I honestly don't have anything at the moment.
Undersheriff? See his name. Go ahead, Paul. You feeling okay?
Doing all right. Shout
All right.
out to Tom for getting me hooked up remotely. A little frustrated not being there with you this evening. A lot of stuff to do. Still a lot of work to do. But yeah, this is fun. But we'll get on it again tomorrow. We'll let you know.
Okay. Any other public comment on the phone? Commissioners, anything else? Plan moving forward. Mr. Mayhew?
From all of these, we can't do none of them. But we're talking, can't do this. We do that, we get 3. When they get all done, they're probably not looking at 9, they're looking at 18.
You mean layoffs? What do you mean?
We can't do that.
What do you mean when you say they can't see what you're saying? So
We
you're
can't
saying,
do the hard cap.
right? There's 149,000,
Right.
right?
They don't want to move road patrol. We shift position, we're gonna lose 3, so we're not gonna do that. So the only thing we got left on here that we got is the 9.
9 part-time is what you're talking about, the 9 FTEs?
The reduction in
9 FTEs.
9. So when you eliminate all the rest of them, we can't do any of the rest, you're looking at 18.
No, but we can't, we're talking about it, but 9 FTEs is how many employees?
9.
Nine.
I wanted to put that out there.
FTE is full-time employee.
Okay.
Okay, I have
To
a comment.
verify that, so there's no misunderstanding. Go ahead.
But these employees would only equal to 542,000. We're still 500,000 bucks short.
Correct.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Well, you said the 18,
Well, you gotta double it.
right?
It's the only thing we got that we're gonna let us use. And we don't wanna use that one. But
Yeah.
that's what we have.
Commissioner Wiltie, plan?
Well, we did 18, really disturbing to see what we have here, and I said 7 months that I've been here, I was really concerned about our budget and the sustainability of the county. Sure hoping that we weren't gonna have to do any job cuts. And I mean, right now, like I said last Thursday, I said earlier tonight, and I'm gonna continue to make phone calls, and I know Commissioner Scott's gonna make phone calls, and Tim's giving me his word, he's gonna continue to talk to the county administrator in Gladwin, and I'm sure the sheriff's gonna continue to do what he can do. And right now, I'm saying we'll do everything in our power to see if that avenue can work, but other than that, I'm really not seeing a lot of other options.
I appreciate everybody being here. I think this is how this needs to happen. Open dialogue, conversation, maybe everybody else can take a look at their budget again and come up with like you guys were just talking about, any little bit helps. This is a very difficult position for us to be in, but our job is to balance this budget. Yes.
I think Mr. Mayhew kind of hit it right on the head with knocking out some of these hairs. I mean, if everyone were to, I know inside, ask them, what is the solution to this problem? I think we all know, but we don't want to do it. We don't like it. I don't even want to say it. But there's like one option left here, really. And with that option, the people in this county won't have the services they have today. They'll be diminished significantly, and what you used to get maybe in 2 or 3 days may take you 2 or 3 months, because there's a lot of work that goes through these offices. It's not as though they're sitting there doing nothing. There's a lot of work, and then when somebody has to have time off, and somebody's got to pick up the slack and work harder, and can hardly wait for that person to come back. I know what that's like, but Mr. Mayhew, I think, hit it right on the head. I don't like it. If somebody could possibly think of something else, but I really don't see this coming from Gladwin. I mean, everybody's in a pinch right now. They're going to go someplace where it's the least expensive, because they don't have money either. And when we're talking about not paying per inmate versus paying for a group of beds that were available, that may not be feasible for them who are already same kind of situation we're in today.
Tim, what time frame are you looking as far as us reconvening? Maybe with some more definitive answers, and then some other brainstorming that is going to occur.
Yeah, for certain, your next committee of the whole meeting a week from Thursday, it will be on the agenda again, and any updates that we have, we'll bring to you at that point. And in the meantime, any other ideas that anybody has to bring out, I mean, again, it's very easy for us to take any scenario and cost it out. If there's a savings, they're very easy to do that. We just need the ideas at this point on how to go about that. But very easy to work with any scenario, no matter how wild it might seem. Let's look at it and see what it does.
Can our committee of the whole, in two weeks, can it be primarily, unless there's something else that's emergent, be the budget?
I think it has to be, and I think probably first thing on the agenda, as much as we can. Sometimes we have guests who come in, with appointments, but this is like the priority.
Correct. If we can keep it primarily to this, anything else that we're able to put off would be greatly appreciated. Commissioner Simmons?
Yeah, what about computer programs? There are some computer programs that are in place right now for convenience, not so much as they have to have. I understand they have to have ones like in the prosecutor's office and stuff like that. But just some things that make it simple for us internally. Not like the courts, because they have to have the programs. The prosecutor has to have her programs. They have to have them. But I'm just talking about programs that we've installed around here that just make it more convenient for the people who work here, rather than do a stubby pencil. Now they're doing it automatically, and the stuff just flies through the computer system. Is there anything like that we have that we could delete, that we put into place that we really don't need? I mean, I'm trying to dig deep. You have no idea. I've spent hours on this thing. I was 3 hours on this thing before I even came to this meeting tonight. And when I look at it, trying to find stuff, and it's going to take all of us to make this happen if we're going to make $1 million. Right now, as a single person looking at this, I can't find it. All of us together, maybe we can. And if we can't, like Mr. Mayhew said, the reduction in force is the only thing left. And
that's rough.
We've already done that before, and we have hired some people back that were gone, and now that position's filled again. So, department heads, elected officials, you're gonna have to look deep into your mind, and some of us know what we have to do, but we just don't want to do it because everything's running so smoothly right now as far as personnel goes. But sometimes, in this particular situation, we may just have to. Those have been hired back is to do away with them. And maybe even at the judicial system, I don't know anything about the courts. Believe me, I don't know a district from a circuit. But I do know a judge when I see one. They have that gown on. But is there something up there that you could get along without? I don't know.
I can tell you in my office, absolutely not. And the thing you need to remember when you're talking about people might have to wait 2 or 3 more days, when you're in the court system, there's deadlines, there's statute that things have to be done by. It's not a point of, I'm sorry, I'm short staffed, you have to wait another week. It doesn't work that way.
I understand.
So, when you're cutting, if that's where you're getting at, you need to make sure where you're cutting is people that can be cut.
And I understand that.
It's not a point, I can't have my staff work overtime. We don't have that. And there's things in the court system especially that have to be done. It's not a point of waiting a week.
I understand that, because sometimes there are deadlines, and sometimes deadlines are missed, and you can get in trouble for missing those deadlines. I understand that.
Another goal, but Tom, I missed you on there. Did you have anything to add to the table?
No, thank you.
Perfect. So our meeting is in 2 weeks.
A week from Thursday, so it's like 10 days. It's less than that.
I appreciate everybody coming tonight. I appreciate everybody's input. Please, again, like Brenda, Commissioner Simmons stated, please take a hard dive into this. These are decisions we definitely don't want to make. So hopefully we don't have to.
So should we
need a miracle is what we need.
With any changes or anything that we have that we can come up with?
Please.
Any ideas?
Please.
Go to Tim.
Yes. Do we have anything you can delete from your
Budget
Look at the
expenditures.
So he has it to give to us next week,
And if we,
and we're running out of time.
right, and if you can pass the information along,
Email
we
us,
have time to look it over. We have time to study it. We have time to come up with ideas as well. Maybe talk to the surrounding, some of my meetings, we meet with other commissioners. That's always helpful. I find that extremely helpful. Can I have a motion? Anything else, Commissioner, before we adjourn? Motion to adjourn,
Motion.
support, adjourned at 44.
That's pretty much what I'm talking about. Some of these computers, is there any program? Really? Every, you don't have to move.
Really good question because there's a lot of them in play.